Hello and welcome to the Game Theory Podcast Offseason Preview Series, where Bryce Simon and I break down all 30 teams and the decisions they have forthcoming in the summer of 2025 in order to try to improve their standing within the NBA. Today, we're going to talk about the Portland Trailblazers, but first, go hit the subscribe button over on YouTube, over on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your listening and your viewing devices going. We upload all of these to YouTube. We upload them all to the podcast feed. We now have over 37,000 subscribers as of the time of this recording. We appreciate all of you guys immensely. Come join the party, come hang out and have a good time with us. If you watch on YouTube, you're going to get to go see all of the nice graphics that Bryce and Andrew and I create in order to talk about these things. So it makes it a little bit easier to follow, especially for the off-season previews. But now that that's out of the way, Bryce, we're going to talk about one of really our teams. I feel like it's our Portland Trailblazers is what it comes down to. The Portland Trailblazers are one of the teams that we truly, I think, talked about more than any other in the back half of the season, in part because they played so well. And like one of the reasons they played so well is the emergence of a core. I feel like that's what hadn't happened recently in this little rebuild post Damian Lillard. They were struggling to find who the core players are like 1,000% going to be between Scoot Henderson's struggles, Shaedon Sharpe being a little bit of a roller coaster. It felt like they hadn't quite nailed down, like, we have the dude, we have 100% the guys that we feel like we can build a core and build an identity around more than anything else. Over the back half of the season, I feel like that finally happened. And I'm not saying that Scoot and Shaedon and some of these other guys aren't in the core by any stretch. But to me, the Trailblazers' identity at the end of the season really came down to the defense and the physicality and the toughness that was provided by Deni Avdija, Toumani Camara, and even to an extent, Donovan Klingan when he moved into the starting lineup as well.
Yeah, I was going to say it's Scoot and Shea are, the big time names and the ones that people talked about pre-draft and all of that. And not that Deni wasn't, like Deni was still, a guy that people liked in that draft. And obviously Klingan was.
They gave up 2 first rounders for him. You know what I mean?
But it is truly Deni and Toumani. Like when I think of the Portland Trailblazers, I think of that wing combination of those two guys and what they do, especially Toumani on the defensive end, the versatility of Deni on the offensive end, how he became like, I don't know. I don't want to call him a free throw merchant because that has a like negative connotation, but like the dude found a way to get to the free throw line a whole bunch. And so I love those two guys. Donovan Klingan is very interesting. Like when you talk about a potential defensive identity with Toumani and then you have Klingan behind him. And I do think part of the excitement was like, okay, we can start to see some of these things with Scoot. We can start to see some of these things with Shaedon Sharpe in terms of what they're able to do. And, maybe this team doesn't have the number one option face of the franchise that you would want, but at least you have multiple really interesting pieces to start to build that. And maybe you have to package them or whatever. The thing they have to do, and I don't want to like bury the lead here, Sam, is they got to figure out what to do with these vets. Like, are they part of helping this team move or are they just in the way and it's time to get them out of the way?
Yeah. So Deni Avdija sat out 3 games in the middle of January. After that point, he played 34 games the rest of the year, averaged 20 points, 8 rebounds, 5 assists, and a steal, shooting 49, 37, 77. He was awesome at the end of the year. Got to the line, as you mentioned, nearly 7 times a game during that run. His ability to just drop his shoulder and bury dudes.
She's so physical, Sam.
He is one of the sneaky, most physical guys in the NBA right now. And I think that people haven't quite caught on to that yet. If you talk to players, they will tell you that he is physical and like people need to recognize it. But he is one of those dudes that's just super physical, super strong, and is incredibly, incredibly capable of creating a bucket at the basket through his driving ability. Toumani Camara, both of us had him on an all defensive team. We both had him second team this year. We think the world of his play, and he was good near the end of the year offensively, to be sure. I think more than anything, that duo feels like a real identity that you can build off of, especially given the fact that Deni is on this incredible contract moving forward. It's really hard to overemphasize. He has 3 years and $39 million left on his contract, which is like almost impossible to fathom for somebody who is as productive and as good as he is.
Real quick, the only bad thing about his deal is how are they going to extend off of it when they get to that point? Because Deni's still only 24 years old. You're not going to be able to extend off a $12 million final year of that contract unless they clean up a whole bunch of cap space that they can, like what we talked about recently with Jaren Jackson Jr. If you guys saw the Memphis Grizzlies offseason preview. So if you're into that, like we spent a lot of time talking about the ways to extend off that number and all of that. That's the only negative. The fact they're going to have him, Sam, he's going to be like half of the MLE, non-tax MLE in 27-28, or almost half on that deal. Just a sick deal for Deni Avdija with how good he is.
And one of the things that we have to talk about here is that Toumani Camara is extension eligible for the first time this summer. He has been in the NBA for 2 years. He was a late draft pick, not a first round pick, was obviously traded to the Blazers as well in the DeAndre Ayton deal, let's call it, the portion of the Damian Lillard deal that sent DeAndre Ayton and Toumani Camara up to the Portland Trail Blazers. I'm fascinated to see what his kind of negotiations look like. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But more than anything, where I do want to start with the Blazers, it's just, we've kind of talked about who we think the core is moving forward, right? Like, to me, it is Deni, Toumani, Donovan Klingan on some level. I think Scoot is probably a part of the core, to be honest with you. I think what I've seen from Scoot is enough to continue to build around him at the point guard position. I know that it was a little bit rough early in the year, this year again, after a bit of a start that wasn't great in his rookie year. Also didn't particularly close the year incredibly well over his last 5 or 6 games. But over his last 35, he was 14 points, 5 assists, 3 turnovers, shot 43, 38, 77. So look, not great numbers, but good enough to where you're just like, okay, for a point guard that is still only 21 years old, we can build off of this and continue to grow with him moving forward. I don't think I would be in the market for a point guard if I was them. I would want to play that out for 1 more year at least and see where Scoot can get to. Shaedon Sharpe is another guy that's extension eligible. They're going to have to make some sort of decision on him. It's a bit of a roller coaster with him. He is capable of such incredible moments offensively. He is also capable of some really dumbfounding moments in terms of decision making, and defensively it's just not there right now, to be honest with you. Like, if there's somebody breaking down on that defense, it often feels like him whenever I watch them. So how his kind of extension negotiation talks go is also really interesting to me. Maybe we'll talk about that a little bit later. And I really like Klingan. I had Klingan first team all rookie this year. I thought that he was impactful defensively. I thought he was super valuable. I think he needs to continue to get into better shape, frankly. I think that is the real factor with him, is continuing to get his body into better condition to be able to run out, 35 minutes a night, 32 minutes a night. That's the next step for him. And hopefully it would add just a little bit of verticality that he's currently lacking, in that you feel whenever he rim runs, there's just not a lot of force and a lot of downhill gravity going to the rim. But the question here is, where are you in terms of the guys that you're looking at, in their core right now that we're for sure building around if we are the Portland Trail Blazers? Yeah,
I think those are the names. I mean, I would throw Shea and definitely Scoot in that as well. In terms of for next year, especially, I'm not willing to trade off of Shaedon Sharpe unless, I guess, Anfernee Simons isn't it 30 years old. You know what I mean, Sam? Anfernee Simons is 25. So if instead of trading him, we always talk about them moving Anfernee Simons. If instead they want to be the team that gives him his next contract and keep him around, then maybe you have to make a decision there. But I mean, I guess you could play those 3 together as well. But it's mostly the names you brought up And I want to see those guys get minutes. I want to see Klingan get pushed in terms of his conditioning to play. It's not going to jump to 30 plus next year, I don't think, but can he play 68 games next year and average 27 and a half minutes or something? That would be a jump forward from what we saw this season where he played under 20 minutes a game. And so I would love to see that in developing. What kind of chemistry is he going to have with Scoot and even with Deni and stuff like that? And so I just wonder, like, what do you do with Jeremy Grant? Like, where does he fit into this rotation? What do you do at the center position? Because you're going to need minutes, even with wanting to prioritize Klingan. But is that, like, DeAndre Ayton going to sign up to play 18 minutes a night behind Donovan Klingan? Is he going to be happy doing that? So they have a very fascinating offseason where it's not like go star hunting or something like that. It's just like, do we pay our young guys? Do we move these vets? Who do we prioritize? Who makes the most sense?
Well, let's start with Simons. To me personally, I would probably not want to pay both Simons and Sharpe, is what I would say.
I would agree.
Because I worry Simons is just small, right? And there are defensive limitations to him being as small as he is. Sharpe, there are defensive limitations in terms of just the way he makes decisions on the court defensively and his motor consistently on that end. Having two guys, because I mean, like, we can talk about the extension number for Sharpe in a minute here, but like, that's going to be up over 20 at least, I would imagine, if you decide to extend him this summer. I wouldn't accept less than that if I was his representation. So I look at it from that perspective. And Simons is probably going to be like, well, look at what I've done. Look at what my production has been to this point in the NBA. I probably deserve not a pay cut. And he's already making $27 million next season. I wouldn't want to pay $50 million for those two guys moving forward, would be the thing. And Simons is the guy that they don't have roster control over. He is an unrestricted free agent, despite only being 25 years old still. He's an unrestricted free agent next summer. I think that the time to cash in on him was honestly probably last offseason, and we talked about it then. But I do think that he's still a valuable player, and that there would be teams that would appreciate having him in their core. I think they would get value for him if they decided to move him.
It's so fascinating. Like, this is the NBA in a nutshell in terms of team building, and then even individual player decisions in terms of Anfernee Simons, a really valuable asset, right? And then it still looks like he is because it's a 1-year deal. But then my thing, if I'm another team, now I'm having to trade for him and extend and pay him.
Correct.
And so what is he wanting? Am I willing to pay that? Can I sign up for that long-term money? And so it does look, I'm interested if they missed their window, to your point. Like, did they miss their window last offseason or even at the deadline this year, where maybe a team could have said, hey, at least we get him for 2 playoff runs before we either have to pay him, or if they're just not going to pay him and use him for those 2 playoff runs. I'm fascinated to see if maybe the value on Anfernee Simons isn't as much in terms of a trade return as what maybe I would think it would be, or what it was 12 months ago when you had him, to your point, a little more cost controlled in terms of the years.
Well, and you look through the teams that could make sense for Simons, right? Like, the Mavericks could use like an on-ball scoring threat, right? They do have PJ Washington. I think PJ would be like kind of an interesting fit as like a third, kind of forward wing kind of player who can defend. But again, like, he is kind of duplicative with Camara, Avdija, Jeremy Grant, who is still on this roster. It's kind of a hard sell for me to work, because you have to make the money work here too, is the other thing. Maybe the Nets might just have interest in Simons, but I don't see that really. Like, I don't know. I don't know that they're going to have a ton of interest in him necessarily.
Yeah, that one doesn't make as much sense to me. If I'm Brooklyn, listen, like, they could use Simons scoring, obviously. I think I'm looking for a little bit more like, I know he can play like on the ball and he averaged almost 5 assists, but just a more true, like, on ball, all around creator type of guy than Simons. Maybe I'm underselling him in regards to that, but
I mean, like, the Bucks could be moving in like a totally different direction this summer, but it's hard to really even like come up with anything for them right now, just because their situation is so unsettled at this point. It's really hard for me to find the right team. It's kind of my point here. Like, I guess that's more than anything what I'm trying to get at. And I don't know that I have it, to be honest. Like, the Bulls already have Kobe White. Like, the Hawks already have Trae Young, and they can just retain Karis LeVert at like a lesser number, right, than what Simons is going to be paid. The Magic are a team we've talked about a lot with Simons. That is a team where he would make a ton of sense, but they're already very expensive is the problem. And paying Anfernee Simons $30 million a year probably does not fit within their like cap situation now, having already paid Franz Wagner 38.6, Jalen Suggs is at 35. Maybe if like you were able to move KCP for Simons, and maybe if it was like the deal that I see a decent amount of the time on the internet is Jonathan Isaac and Cole Anthony for Anfernee Simons. Like, could you do like Isaac, Anthony, and 15 for Simons? Like something like that.
Yeah.
That to me is more of a rental than anything, because I just don't, because they're going to have to pay Paulo here coming up too.
Yeah.
And there's a chance Paulo makes all NBA next year. And if he does, he's at 30% of the cap. So I don't know if paying Simons 30 million works for them necessarily.
I think the other thing from the Blazers perspective is it has to be a collaborative, like offseason plan. And I know every team has one of these, but my point is, like you just said it. Okay, Dallas kind of makes sense. Maybe it's PJ Washington or Najee Marshall. Well, how is PJ Washington, Jeremy Grant, Toumani Camara, Deni Avdija all playing next? Like, so that's where my point is, like, you have to know what you're going to do with Jeremy Grant, or like with Orlando, if you were doing that trade, it'd be kind of interesting. Like, could you get Goga back and like that's your backup, like that's your center duo with Klingan, but then you have to have a plan for DeAndre Ayton in that scenario as well. So it's just like, and this is another team now that we're doing that has a draft pick that actually matters, like that's worth really discussing. And you got to incorporate that player as well. Like most likely, Sam, they're going to draft a wing at 11 would be my guess, a wing forwardy type of player. They don't have to. I just, based on my board, I guess I should say what I think is going to be best available there, or
I big, think like any non-big. It makes sense to me there.
Yeah. And so that's my thing. Or they're going to take a big. So then again, you're not trading Simons for a big. You're already have like now an issue there. So my point is, until you know what you're going to do with all of these veterans, it's hard to even just trade one, especially Simons, because he's the one that returns real value, right? Like Grant's not returning great value in a trade, I would assume, because of the contract. And Ayton's at least on an expiring, but Simons is the one that it's like the log jams can get even more so, depending on what you return in this trade.
And this is where the offseason gets like a little bit complicated for Portland, because you could say to them like, oh man, like they could actually go star hunting. Like they could look to combine DeAndre Ayton and Anfernee Simons and expiring money for those two into like a real star player.
Yeah, sure.
You know what I mean? Like that's about max money, those two. Right. And I don't know if I'm them. I don't know how much sense that makes. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know how much,
like going after Kevin Durant, right? Like try to go get KD and fit him in here.
Yeah. Or like they could try and go get Giannis. They could try and go get like a real like difference maker if they wanted to in an interesting way. But they're also like going through an ownership change seemingly right now too. So, and then on top of it, we talk about the second aprons all the time, right? And the first aprons and how expensive things get so quickly now in the NBA with how you have to pay young players once they hit a certain number. And Toumani Camara and Shaedon Sharpe this year are the two prime examples of this with the Blazers, unfortunately. I just don't know what to expect from this. Like, I do not know exactly what to anticipate from them. I think that Simons' value is probably something in the ballpark of if you get him as a rental, you're giving up a first round pick. Like that's the reality of it, right? I think that they would return I think they would get a first round pick in salary matching for Simons. I just don't know who the team is right now. Maybe it's the Mavericks and like they trade PJ Washington to a third team potentially.
Yeah. Does that mean maybe the Simons thing actually goes on until the deadline? Like where a team is a little bit more like, okay, we know we need Anfernee Simons because of, Dallas is the team we bring up because they already know their injury, right? Like they already know Kyrie, got hurt. Other teams are going to, are we good enough? Are we not good enough? And at the deadline, but the other thing is, what if a team doesn't need him? Like that's the other thing you could find yourself in is maybe none of these teams that feel like they're real contenders end up with a need for guard. And then you're just stuck with him. In terms of now he is just an unrestricted free agent and you didn't get anything as an asset. You didn't extend him, all of that. Like, I'm not saying having Simon, like I would assume they want to be in the playoffs themselves next year in some capacity that they will be, obviously going for that. But I just wonder if that's how it ends up playing out as a team is actually like, we're not really sure. We feel good about our team right now in the offseason. Call us back at the deadline and maybe we'll be interested then.
And that's a great point as well. Like if I'm the Blazers, look, I don't know what kind of pressure that the front office is under. If I was them, like I might be a little bit worried about having like new ownership coming in. You know what I mean? Like you never know what's going to happen there. But like, I might feel like I have to try and take a step forward next year, right?
Sure.
And trading Anfernee Simons probably makes that harder, right?
Yep.
So maybe it's, you can find a landing spot for DeAndre Ayton as a value play instead, right? And you keep Simons. But if you're doing that, if you're deciding to keep Anfernee Simons because you want to take a step forward next year, I might look into the market for Shaedon Sharpe instead of paying him, right? So it's actually like very difficult to say what this team should do beyond just like a few very obvious things, right? Like the most obvious thing for me this summer is to extend Toumani Camara.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
So the way an extension would work there, Toumani Camara has a non-guaranteed salary next season and then has a team option for the 2026-27 summer. If I was them, I would be going to Toumani and saying, hey, we will give you like 360 or something and just lock in the money now. Maybe it's like 355, 345, like 350, like whatever it is. Maybe it's 350 is the number, right? We will rip up that team option year in 2026-27. And we will make sure that you are paid right now. And if I'm Toumani Camara, I'm getting like an extra 3 years or so before I'm able to like hit free agency again, potentially, or really for the first time, I guess, in this circumstance. And that would be in the summer of, what would that be?
28,
the summer of 2029, he'd be hitting free agency. Or I could maybe try and extend him off of that again at some point. It's the situation it's most similar to is the Andrew Nembhard situation last summer, where because they don't have a team option on the third year, it's on the fourth year. Toumani is, I believe, kind of locked in to making like $2 million next year, but he can anticipate that he's going to get like a real amount of money in the next summer. And if I'm him, like I feel pretty good about that.
Yeah, no, I think this would be really smart for Portland to get something like you say. So that would be, you said 3 more years. If you're Toumani, it's like you said, you lock in a lot more money than what you have right now. Like you're guaranteeing yourself some real money. I can see some people being like, he just made all defensive team and he shot 38% from 3 this year and looked really good. And, like I would understand people saying bet on yourself if it was quote unquote only 3 for 50, somewhere in the 20 AAV range. I get it. The other thing though is you lock it in now, you guarantee yourself $60 million, which is life-changing money, especially compared to what he was getting. And now you're going to hit free agency when you're 27, 28 and
29 at that
29
point.
Age wise or the year?
Yes.
Okay.
Age both actually, because he was born in 2000, so that's how that works.
Yep. Easy year for that. So like you still are going to hit with like I said, the salary cap is going up and you're going to hit it whenever you should be right in the middle of your prime. That if you continue on this trajectory and you turn into a 15-point a game guy that consistently shoots 38% from three and an all defense level player, you're really going to cash in after 4 more years of proving that. So you lock in your money. You still have some fluidity down the road to maximize your earning power. I don't mind that from Toumani's side. Like you said, it's hard to turn down guaranteed money of this size. You know what I mean? It's hard to bet on yourself as much as you want to believe in yourself. You're one injury away. Like even for Toumani, Sam, what if he comes back next year and shoots 31% from three, like has a shooting regression or something like that? Now you're in a very different place when it comes to contract negotiations.
So, somewhere like 355 to 365 seems completely reasonable here to me. It's like a bit of a discount for Portland. It locks in money for Camara, like real dollars. It's very similar to the Nembhard deal last summer. Like it just strikes me across the board. Like this guy is very clearly a guy that you can win with. This guy is very clearly useful. Let's make sure and give him security now. Right. And again, the way this would work is you rip up the 4th year of his contract. He still plays next year on $2.2 million. And then, 2026, 27, 2027, 28, and 2028, 29, he's making, somewhere in the ballpark of $17 to $22 million a year. Feels reasonable to me.
Yep. I like that.
Okay. And by the way, like, I think if they paid him like 25 a year, great. Like I'm all for it. But if I'm the Blazers at that point, I might play it out.
Yeah.
Like there's a number that makes sense for everybody to me here.
I'm with you there. Like you say 25 and I start to get a little nervous, and I'm the biggest Toumani Camara fan there is. It's just like, I don't think the defense is going to change. Like I want to see what the offense continues to look like. Like again, as much as I love him, he shot 31% from three in college, even though he did get better every single year, but career 63% free throw shooter. His rookie year in the NBA, he averaged 7.5 points. This year was still only 11 points. Again, I love all of the things he does, but you start to get to like 25 and above, and like, I want some scoring juice, like some real scoring juice with that number to go along with the defense. So I think 20 is like 18 to 20 is the sweet spot for me. Maybe, I wouldn't stop there if I was the Blazers, but you start to get to 25. I'm with you. I think I may just say like, okay, let's see this, do it again, improve. And then, maybe we do have to pay him more after that, but then I think I might take the risk there.
So the other guy that's extension eligible here that we need to talk about is Shaedon Sharpe, that we've briefly alluded to, but haven't really gotten to money wise yet. Shaedon Sharpe last year averaged 18.5 points, 4.5 rebounds, 2.8 assists versus 2.1 turnovers, shot 45, 31, 79. Well, I struggle with Shaedon a little bit because it all looks like it should work. It all looks like he should be a star. He should, like, honestly, like he should be like the next great like scoring wing. He's 6'6", he's a 7-foot wingspan. He is ludicrously explosive. The jumper looks very clean, but it doesn't go in at the rate that you want it to, or that you would frankly expect it to, based off of his shooting like motion and based off of the way that he's previously like hit shots at certain times, right? Like he had 36% as a rookie, right? He also just plays like at a very like real, like low key. He's like a low key guy. It feels like very quiet in a way that there's just not like a lot of fire there. And that's fine. Like not everybody has to be like explosive in terms of their emotions or anything, but like you can feel it like in terms of like motor, it feels like sometimes on the court too. And that's where it gets a little bit frustrating for me. Honestly, like one of the most interesting evaluations right now in the entire league. And I don't know what to do with him. Like, I'll just be honest. I don't know what to do with Shaedon Sharpe as a player right now in the NBA and as an asset in the NBA.
Can you, as we talk through, can you pull up whether it's NBA.com, Cleaning Glass, like his on the ball versus off the ball kind of like use it, like attempts and stuff, because I feel like he played way more on the ball than what I kind of thought he was going to be when he was coming into the NBA. And I wonder if it's just like he was doing it more than I thought, so then it seemed like way more, or if it actually is a situation where he's doing more of that, because I find that very interesting in terms of his fit on this team, like specifically with Scoot and other guys moving, even Deni is a guy we talk about being able to play with the ball in his hands. And so I just, and you're right, Shaedon is one of those, like, he's one of the more aesthetically pleasing players to watch in this league, just in terms of the way he moves and some of the shot making and stuff like that when he has it going. But it just doesn't always click for me in a way that makes me feel super, super comfortable about giving real money to it and him being my number 2 option or number 3 option or something like that.
So here I have 472 3-point attempts for Shaedon Sharpe last year.
Okay.
243 off the catch. 227 in pull-up jumpers, and then 34 were in just like, early shots that he would take within the offense.
So
right?
Roughly 50-50, very close.
Yeah. Like 53-47-ish, let's call it. Took more pull-up jumpers in 2023-24 than he did catch and shoot jumpers.
Okay.
And then in his rookie year, it was right around like 55-45 in terms of catch and shoot versus pull-ups. He was drastically better at catch and shoot as a rookie. This year, he was a little bit better at pull-up jumpers.
Okay.
He's like a very on the ball player.
Yeah.
To me, I like him more when he's playing off the ball and like attacking closeouts and being able to like use his dynamic athleticism when a defense is already bent. I don't love him when he's like in ball screens trying to like make decisions in like snake ball screens. Like he has all the flexibility and, explosiveness to be able to like take advantage of those situations when he needs to. And look, he's so young is the other thing. Like he is still just 21 years old, turns 22, like right around the date that this will come out. There's a lot that's very impressive about Shaedon Sharpe. There's also just a lot that is kind of still lacking from his process when you watch him play. And also, if he's going to be a guy that is attacking off of bent defenses, he has to shoot. Like he has to, if he's going to be like a catch and like a off ball scoring wing, the key is the shot. Like he has to be able to really hit shots, not just at a, reasonable level. He has to be fucking elite at it. And he's not there yet.
Yeah, I mean, so those numbers were relatively, it wasn't quite as much as I thought, but I'm with you. Like, I'm like, this archetype I love off the ball, cutting, curling off a screen, coming off zoom action, stuff like that. Not like initiating the possession, operating a ball screen or something like that. And so Shaedon is one of those guys that I wonder, I feel like him and his representation would want and demand more than probably what I'm comfortable offering. And that's probably why, like, I want to end up, like maybe they don't end up with a deal. Like I'm trying to look at him and Jalen Green's first 3 years in the league. And like, does Shaedon have an argument of, could they go and say, hey, I deserve the Jalen Green contract? Like, is that a starting point for them? Yeah. Yeah.
If I'm him, maybe slightly less, because I think Jalen had scored 20 prior to this year. So like it might be slightly less than that.
Their actual third years look to be relatively similar.
Yeah.
Jalen actually averaged a few more assists. The difference was Jalen's rookie year and second year were definitely better than what Shaedon did. But also when you account for inflation and the cap going up, it's like, I think if I'm Shea, I start at that number. And if I'm Portland, I'm probably nowhere near that number. And then it's like, who's willing to give the most to get to a number that makes more sense?
So if you're Shaedon's representation, knowing that these deals do tend to be like slight discounts, because there's just no reason to do an extension if you're not getting like a little bit of what you think could be a win on some level when they're kind of questionable decisions. What is a number for you with like, is it 20? Is it for 100? Is it for 110?
If I'm Shaedon's representation or if I'm the Blazers?
But I mean, like, what is the max you would offer if you're the Blazers, and what is the minimum you would take if you're Shaedon Sharpe?
So if I'm the Blazer, I don't think I can't go into the 30s for Shaedon Sharpe. Can't like
I agree with you.
Yeah, like
now, I would want another year. I think it's possible he could prove to be worth that, and if he proves he's worth it, like I'm comfortable with that.
Yep.
But I would not want to do that right now.
If he scores 20 a game on 45-35 next year and I see growth defensively, then like let's have a real conversation. And the defensive thing is like, as I look through my notes as we do these, Sam, he has some of the most frustrating defensive notes of any individual player I took notes on all year. And that's 30 teams, hundreds of games where I watched full games and took intense notes. And they're like, I don't try to be an asshole. I'm mostly positive. The defensive notes are really rough, Sam. And so 4 for 100 is much more palatable for me. I don't think I could go over that if I'm Portland. Am I crazy for not feeling comfortable going over that number? Like, I don't know. I would struggle, Sam. I know he's
4,105, like something like that. Like it's a hard number. Like he is one of the hardest players. I agree with you. The defense drives me insane. It truly drives me completely crazy. So,
but here's
he's
the thing.
A very difficult player.
If I'm Shaedon, I'm betting, like, I know I just said this about Toumani, but like, if I'm Shaedon, I probably bet on myself, even though I just said like, hey, take the money. There's a little bit difference here because of where Shaedon was drafted and the amount of money he's already made and guaranteed in his career. There is a slight difference there, but I don't know. Maybe I don't know. That's probably the sweet spot, right? Like that's probably the most likely chance is Shaedon can say, I got 9 figures. 6 figures, not going to do it. 9 figures. And, and the Blazers are like, hey, maybe you're giving a little bit more, but we're playing on the upside here. And maybe they're seeing things that they really believe. The age thing is fascinating as well. Like you brought up how young he is.
Yeah. It's one of those deals where like, if you do an extension now, it might turn out really like bad, but it might also turn out to be like this incredible bargain for your organization. And that's kind of why we started this conversation saying that there's just no way that you can do both Simons and him. Yeah. I think on long-term money.
Yep. Sure.
There are just too many questions there like that. And given that Simons is coming up now, maybe you do take it into the season. Like I don't really have a problem with that, but if I got offered like a solid first round pick right now for Simons with expiring money, I would probably do it.
Yeah. I think I would as well, especially depending on where that pick was. And like, if it's in this class, do you feel like we talked about this with the Blazers? Could you package and get to a higher tier than what you're currently in at 11, depending on what your board looks like? I also want to be like fair to Shaedon here real quick as well. He only played 32 games in that second season. So like when looking at Jalen Green's second season versus him, he only got 32 games in that year to put up the numbers he did. And that's part of like his growth as well. Like I would do this for other players, like specifically Pistons players. I always bring up, hey, like Cade missed this year and Ivy missed this year and whatever. That is fair with Shaedon as well.
And with Shaedon particularly, also did not play like in a one and done year.
Yeah. So I just thought about that. Like, so two of the last 4 years, I don't want to say barely played. 32 NBA games is like still substantial, but like before his rookie year, didn't play, plays his rookie year, only gets 32 games of his next year. Like there has to be something in terms of his development that affects.
Yeah, no, I agree. But did it affect it positively or negatively? Like, did he lose those reps and thus like is going to be behind the 8 ball? Right. It's a really tricky conversation.
It is
like he's a fascinating player. Like there is a chance he's a real star. And if you got him at like 25, 26 million a year, you'd be like, holy shit, like this is an amazing deal. There is a chance that he is like not a wildly positive player. to me. It just depends on like where you are on the shot. He has to be like an elite shooter to me.
Sure.
And he's just not there, despite the fact the mechanics looks like he should be. We haven't even gotten to Jeremy Grant. We haven't even gotten to like, hey, they have like the Matisse Thybulle deal. Like, could Matisse Thybulle be a guy that, you know, a contender looks at as like a defensive difference maker on an expiring to take into a like trade exception or something?
So he's a name that I feel like fans bring up a lot whenever you're just talking about like, oh, a wing defender, whatever. I feel like he's so forgotten about right now in terms of everything else. Like and for me, I guess. So what, he's got a player option. I would assume he will exercise that.
Definitely going to exercise that. Yeah.
Only played 15 games last season. I don't know. Interesting. You know, just because of the defense with Thybulle, but there's obviously all of the, you know, there's the offensive questions that go with it, even though like over his last, how many games sample is this? His last 150 games he's played, he shot 36% from three on low volume. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, look, teams don't guard him.
He has no gravity. I mean? Like that's the thing. He's one of those where the numbers almost don't matter, right? And so the reputation is what it is, and therefore the gravity or lack thereof is what it is.
Yeah, no, I agree. You know, looking for, I mean, like Robert Williams has 1 year left on his deal, and DeAndre Ayton has 1 year left on his deal. So here's the other thing here about all of this, right? We're talking about like them potentially like trading these guys, right? Trading these vets. And Jeremy Grant's like a totally different conversation because he's locked in long-term, right? But you look at the way that they're set up for 2026, 27. If you think Deni is like your dude, which we kind of started this conversation talking about like Deni Avdija being like a real dude, right? Right now, they only have like $73 million under contract that year, right? Going into like the summer of 2026, or like with the summer of going into the summer of 2026. Yeah, because of all of that expiring money. They only have like 73 million under contract. And that'll change to some extent if they extend Camara, right? That'll add maybe 15, 20. But in today's era of the second apron, is there a chance that you're just better off letting these guys expire than bringing in more money? Unless you're getting like genuine pick value. Like if somebody wants to trade you a real first round pick for Anfernee Simons with expiring money, I'm all for that, right? If someone wants to trade you like, you know, a later first round pick for DeAndre Ayton for some reason, which like I'm skeptical of, but you know, whatever, things happen, right? Sure. Okay. Makes sense. But, you know, Rob Williams, same deal. If someone wants to give you like a real first round pick for Rob Williams, I'm all for it. Makes sense. But if that isn't on the table and you're bringing in like longer term money on top of the money that you're going to have to pay Shaedon, on top of the money that you might have to pay Scoot if he's good enough, you might just be better off keeping your cap sheet clean in today's era. And like the Blazers right now are one of the few teams in the league. The Pistons are another one, by the way, that, you know, we kind of talked about a little bit already when we did their offseason preview, where figuring out like the right allocation of asset acquisition versus salary cap flexibility in the second apron era is the most interesting conversation league wide right now.
So is your thought here almost run it back because Ayton's on an expiring now, and Rob Williams is on an expiring, and Matisse is on an expiring, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And just other than Jeremy Grant, who's just like extends out longer, and just say like, hey, let's run it back. We went 36-46 last year. We were 3 games away from the play-in. Our young guys are going to get older and theoretically better. We're going to add a lottery pick again, and let's just go win as many games as we can, knowing that then over the next year, 2 years, our cap sheet is going to naturally clean itself up because these guys are going to come off deals. Is that kind of the idea?
Yeah, kind of.
I don't hate it. Like, especially if you could move Jeremy, then like in that scenario, then it's like, can you move Jeremy? Because if you get off Jeremy's money, like it could look even better. Like it always amazes me how many.
But I guess my thing is though that like you don't need to even get off of Jeremy.
You don't have to. Sure, you don't have to. And maybe
like it almost mitigates the Jeremy Grant problem to some level. And oh, by the way, if you're flexible, you might be able to renegotiate and extend Deni Avdija if he's like a real dude, right?
Well, so yeah. So the point at the top where I said you wouldn't have the cap space to extend him without him, like all of a sudden you may be able to do something like that. The other thing with Jeremy is that $30 million at that point, like it may end up being a really good trade chip in terms of just matching salary if you get into a situation where you need to do that. So like there's only quote unquote, 3 years left going into 25, 26. Like you've lasted it this long, another year. And then again, like all of a sudden it's an expiring a couple years from now. And again, matching salary. If you need a big trade, maybe that is a decent path for them.
Yeah. So we bring this up to say, and this is now the longest offseason preview that we've done, probably because we love the Blazers and that's the reality. And look, like we should just give like a brief overview of their cap situation, right? Like, you know, they are 23 million from the first apron, 35 million from the second apron, 17 million away from the luxury tax line, even with all of these guys on the team. So like they theoretically could have access to their non-taxpayer mid-level this summer if they want to, and still have a ton of flexibility next summer. So like we haven't even talked about free agents that they could look at. We haven't talked about like retaining Delano Banton and Jabari Walker, like two guys that are at least like somewhat useful. Delano is like an interesting player to me more than a particularly valuable player, but like kind of a fun player at least. They have just so many things going on, Portland, and that's what makes them so interesting. We haven't talked about Jeremy really, and trying to find a way off that deal. I guess my thing is they might not need to, is where I'm at on this now. Like if they could find a way to like rope him into a bigger deal, sure, whatever. But if not, like they're kind of set to where they can eat it at this point.
Yeah, no, that I wasn't anticipating there to be so many avenues and paths, but they just have a lot going on in terms of the young versus the vets versus the contract situations of multiple players. Do you move them? Do you not? And like you said, like we didn't talk about free agency, but where are they movers? I think part of why that isn't as big a conversation is where does a free agent slide into the rotation until one of these guys is moved, right? Like where do they fit in? Again, whenever you're also adding a draft pick that I assume they want to give a little bit of time to. So until something shakes out, until one or a couple of these guys are traded, I don't know that there's a whole lot to add to the roster.
Yeah, no, it's in number 11. We haven't even talked about number 11 yet, by the way. Like there's still so much happening here. I mean, just briefly, like very briefly, because we do need to get out of here. Names for number 11 for them.
Okay. Carter Bryant is like a home run. Oh my gosh. I think this would be amazing. Like you add him to those other two dudes, and I think that's absolutely incredible. As you mentioned, just like any non-big. So like wings there, Nick Clifford, Cedric Coward, like that's a little high, but like those are the guys. And then if you do know you're getting off of Anfernee Simons, like are we in? Like, do you immediately replace him with one of those guards potentially? I don't know that Fears is the right name, but
the number one guy for me that I would love for them is Kasparis.
Yeah.
Like a smart like guard who can play both on and off the ball. If he was to fall to 11, I would be really excited if I was Portland.
Kasparis and Carter are the home runs in my opinion, based on my board and how I think they would fit with them.
Yeah. Or they could look to like package this with, is there a way that you package this with Anfernee Simons to like move up or something like that? Like, is there a team that would really like that as an offer? Like given that, DeJounte Murray is out, like, is there hey, we will do Anfernee Simons and number 11 for CJ McCollum and number 7 or something like that. That doesn't make New Orleans any better, but maybe they like, Anfernee Simons is like a long-term replacement for CJ McCollum, right?
Yeah.
I don't even know if I don't even think that's like a great idea. I'm just like trying to come up with, different ways to use the Simons asset, right? Is there a way that I don't know, like, I don't think the Wizards would probably be interested. I don't think the Jazz would probably be all that interested. They have enough scoring guards. Like the 76ers, I think just have enough scoring guards between McCain and Maxey.
I was going to say, if it wasn't Simons, Philly would be the interesting one, but I don't think that makes as much sense with what they already have there.
The Nets obviously have all these picks and just, they already have Cam Thomas, right? Maybe if they don't pay Cam Thomas, like, Anfernee Simons could look interesting as an option, but I don't know. Like there are just a lot of different things. I think that Portland probably is more likely to sit there and pick. Yeah, I would guess, and just add another interesting young player to this core. My number one though would be if Kasparis falls to them. I would love that. He would be perfect playing with Shaedon. He'd be perfect playing with Scoot as like a secondary ball handler with Scoot. He would be able to run like a second unit at some point. I think there's just like a lot of different ways that you could make it work with Kasparis in that core.
Yep. I agree. I think Kasparis would be awesome. Kasparis and Carter again would be the home runs for me. If you get one of them to fall to 11, great. If not, then the conversations are a little bit different. So,
and then the final guy I'll bring up here, is there any chance you like Danny Wolf for these guys?
Listen, I'm a little more like Danny Wolf doesn't have to play the 5 than I think maybe some people are. And so like, I that would be interesting to me where like, okay, he plays a little bit of forward stuff. But again, like I mentioned earlier, Klingan's never going to play. You always need a backup center. I said recently on one of our podcasts that how much I realized, a third center is, how important a third center is when we were talking about Vlad Golden. And so, I think with Klingan, even with Klingan, a guy like Danny Wolf that could play, the non-Klingan minutes at center, but also play some minutes with him or not at center, I think he would be interesting also.
Yeah, I'm just like trying to come up with like different, ideas because they're in kind of a weird spot of the draft this year. Portland, where they could like try and just like reach on somebody that they love. Like if they loved Coward, just like go for it. Right. And that might not even end up being a reach on my board personally, but Danny Wolf is just like a different skill than what they already have. You know what I mean? Like just trying to fill in like different gaps is kind of what I would be thinking if I was them. I don't know. We'll see. Bryce, tell the people where they can find your work. Tell the people what's going on.
Yeah, at Motor City Hoops on Twitter, on Blue Sky, on the Substack, the Pistons Pulse podcast. Otherwise, right here with Game Theory Podcast with Sam Vecenie. If you're Blazers fans out there, you should love this. You should love us now after giving your squad all of this love and attention. But seriously, thank you guys, everybody, for the support. Like, share, review, rate, subscribe, tell a friend.
Blazers fans have always been really good to us this year, in part because, we are so interested in their team, just with what they're building and everything. Just a lot of different directions for the Blazers this summer. I'm really interested to see the direction that they go. Go subscribe to the Game Theory YouTube page or the podcast feed, Spotify, Apple, wherever you go to get good podcasting content. We are up there. Over 37,000 of you have subscribed to the Game Theory YouTube channel. We appreciate you guys immensely for it. Thank you so much. We will be back tomorrow with another off-season preview. Until next time, we'll talk soon. Bye.